Thank you so much for joining me into the Life Gets Messy Zoom series. I am so excited to be with you today and grateful for your time and interest in this series. As you may already know, I'm a family law attorney and partner with Fox Rothschild. Having practiced family law for nearly 2 decades, I have had a front row seat into the lives of couples and families who are going through what is most likely one of the most difficult times of their lives. Getting divorced, even in the best of circumstances, is painful, difficult, and sometimes gut-wrenching. Yet once these couples and their families can move forward beyond the arduous divorce process, there is an opportunity for life transformation and happiness. They can tap into strengths and qualities they never knew they had. I have been fortunate enough to have a front row seat and witness some of these transformations firsthand. Many get the chance to begin again and build new, healthier, and happier relationships. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me and the Life is Messy Zoom series. I am so excited to be here with you this morning and grateful for your time and interest in our lovely series. So today I want to talk about the virtues of liberality, magnificence, and pride. And for some reason, it feels like it's a perfect time to have this conversation. I don't know if it's the weather or the near end of the summer, but these 3 virtues are so important, really for anyone going through a life-changing event. And because I am a lawyer, and because I value my clients, I will tell you in advance that anything that we talked about, their information has been changed to maintain privacy for any of the stories that we're going to discuss today. So I thought we would start with some of the basics. I know you're all very bright, but to flatline definitions: liberality, the quality of being open to ideas and free from prejudice. Magnificence is the quality of being magnificent. It's also historically used as a title for monarchs or other distinguished persons. And pride refers to humble and content, a sense of attachment toward one's own or another's choices or actions. So, my typical client will come in and they are hurt, scared, anxious, sometimes depressed, angry, confused, all of the above. And people come to lawyers, whether, regardless of what they need, for their experience and their guidance in understanding how the law could be applied to a specific set of facts, that impact them because they want to cure what they believe is an injustice. They want answers, and they get a lot of maybes. They're frustrated with their own life choices or the choices or actions of their spouses or significant other. And so I think that a good attorney recognizes and understands those emotions and allows the client to experience them, but also knows when they are becoming destructive or toxic and counterproductive to the working relationship and to the process as a whole. If we are leaving a relationship because we are unhappy, unsafe, or because it's toxic, whatever the reason is, and if we keep the virtues of liberality at our core, doesn't that change the dynamic or the process? So in preparing for today, I was thinking about, what I was going to share with you all to really hone in on these virtues. And I thought about just the general mindset of somebody who is going through, whether it's a divorce or post-divorce situation, but certainly any major life change, and how their specific mindset can really change the outcome for them, not only personally, but I also think in the way that the law is applied, because at the end of the day, the judges and the mediators and the lawyers are all people, and there is some level of human reaction that goes into the process. So yes, we are applying the law, certainly, but judges are humans, and then they see a certain person present in one way, and that may impact their judgment about that person, not about the law, but certainly about that person. So the quality of being open to new ideas and free from prejudice, that virtue, I think, can set the tone quite nicely for a case or for an experience that somebody was going through. So I say that there's a lot of different types of clients that I work with. I'll talk to you now about basically two major ones. So I have one type of client who will listen blindly to whatever a lawyer tells them, whether it's me or somebody else. They don't question things, even if it goes against their gut instinct or their own core values. They feel that they have found somebody, they are paying them good money, this is their expert, and this is the person who's going to guide them through this process. And whatever they say goes. There is another type of client who is pretty much the exact opposite, that everything that their lawyer tells them they challenge. There is no reasoning with them. They listen to basically everyone else. They saw it on television, and that means that it should happen one way or another, very black and white. And if you challenge that idea, that mindset, they are not happy with that because they have a certain level of expectation that comes from everybody beside the person who they've hired to work with. I'd say that most people fall in the middle of these two extremes, but certainly there's a lot of gray in between. So here's a fictitious scenario to walk us through about the idea of liberality. Mike and Jill are getting divorced. Jill was the decision maker in the relationship. She will tell you that it's because Mike was a loser, that Mike was unable to make decisions, that he was lazy and left everything to her. She was the high-powered businesswoman and certainly was used to making decisions, and so it was a natural role for her. And that's what he would say, why she was left to things. And when he tried to make a decision, she would ignore or invalidate or emasculate those decisions. And so eventually he gave up, and that was the dynamic of their relationship. She's the breadwinner, and she's angry that she has to pay alimony, despite the fact that Mike is a school teacher. And he took the primary role of caregiving for the children and caregiving for the home because of his hours and his flexibility. Jill traveled for work, worked sometimes on weekends to get through those big projects. And that was their role in the relationship. So now they're getting divorced, and Jill's angry because she's been told that she's going to have to pay spousal support or alimony to Mike. And so every communication from Jill to Mike is laced with insults, and she'll tell anyone who will listen what a loser he is. So Mike goes to his first attorney, and he spends about $10,000 with that attorney, who revels in this type of conflict, and took that $10,000 and spent it on a letter writing campaign with Jill's attorney, who also loves this type of conflict. And after 2 months, where emotions are at an all-time high of toxicity, these two people aren't any further in the legal process, and Mike has lost $10,000 engaging in a mudslinging campaign, not to mention that he's not sleeping well, he's feeling depressed, he's gained 10 extra pounds, and he's angry pretty much all of the time. So Mike comes to me and asks me, what would I do different? How do I change the course of this ship? Because he recognizes that he can't continue to live like this financially, and just for his own well-being, he doesn't want to be in this boat anymore. And so the first question I asked Mike is, what do you want to walk away with at the end of all of this? When everything is all said and done, what is it that you will need to move forward with your life? And true story, Mike is flabbergasted. His facial expression was priceless. And he looks at me and says, no one has ever asked me that question. Not my lawyers, not my family, and not myself. I've never even asked myself that. I just kind of ran into this full steam ahead, upset. And so I tell him a few things, which I tell pretty much any client that I work with. The nonsense has to stop now. Number one, you need to be in therapy. You are angry and you have a right to have those emotions without question. But I am not the place, nor is the legal process the place to vet through or work through those emotions. Number one, the legal system just doesn't really allow for that. And I believe in some certain circumstances punishes people who try to use the system to do that. So you need to get into therapy with a good therapist. And let's talk about solutions so that we can be less focused on the problems and move forward. So I challenge Mike and I tell him, the first thing I need you to do is to be open-minded and stop judging both yourself and Jill, which is hard because Jill cheated on Mike, was proud to tell Mike about it in the heat of one of their many arguments, and he's hurt. He's hurt by that infidelity. His pride is hurt. His ego is hurt. He's hurt just personally because this is somebody that he was in a very long-term relationship with and has children with, and all of that, all of the natural emotions that anybody would be feeling. So I challenged him to stop judging himself, what he could have done differently, why he didn't see certain flags, but also to stop judging Jill for her choices and to be open-minded to everything that we discuss. It doesn't mean we have to give in, to concede to anything, but it means that we have to certainly be open-minded and just think before we respond. I also tell Mike that he can only control his reactions and his emotions, and that Jill and her attorney are onto their own. Their actions are not founded in the law or in a sense of justice. Jill especially is acting from emotion, and he's just reacting to those emotions, and it's just so toxic. So he needs to disengage, first and foremost. He needs to institute what I call a 24-hour response rule. Except in the case of an emergency, you get a communication from either your spouse or your spouse's attorney, and I don't want to hear from you for 24 hours unless there's an emergency. You need to sit with it because everybody is human, reacts emotionally, and will send the nasty response, the gut response, the emotional response without really thinking about what does that serve me? And what am I going to be able to do long term to solve this problem or make sure that I move forward instead of digressing, getting in the mud. Unknown caller. Say that again? Oh, okay. To move forward and to be productive in whatever this process is, both personally and through the legal system. It takes time and practice, and there'll be slip-ups, but you can't fall off the wagon. Every day, Mike has to say, why am I getting this communication? What do I really need to achieve in my response? And what can I ignore simply that's not serving my purpose and is only adding to the toxicity or the emotional games that Jill is interested in playing? And so, again, taking practice, and there will be slip-ups, but not falling off that wagon. So it took a year for Jill and Mike to get divorced. And I have to tell you that she was relentless the entire time. I don't know that Jill was herself in therapy or getting the same type of advice about, moving forward, or whatever her other issues were that made her so angry with Mike. But the Facebook posts, the conversation just within the community, at the local swimming pool, at their country club, at the kids' schools, all of that was what she held on to and kept disseminating whatever her version was of the situation to basically anybody who would listen. And so, Mike and I worked together consistently to avoid that and to have an appropriate response to those attacks, if you will. And we came up with multiple settlement scenarios that achieved his goals, because we were always focused on what Mike's goals were to achieve when all of this was going to be over and he was going to be moving on and everything was said and done. And as they say, there's definitely more than one way to skin the cat. And that's what Mike and I thought about and kept at the center of our focus, and figuring out, okay, what can I live with? And presenting different options to Jill, because she certainly wasn't interested in doing that. She had one mindset, and all of it was focused upon her emotional needs. That she was angry again, that she was told that she was going to have to pay alimony to Mike, and she wanted no discussion that involved that legal conclusion. That wasn't an emotional thing that Mike wanted. That was a legal conclusion based upon the years of their marriage, their income, his responsibilities that would continue to move forward with the children, and just the lifestyle that they needed to live. She wanted him to stay in New Jersey, first and foremost. She wanted him to stay in the town in where they were living, which was an affluent town. And so, all of those things come into play when we're analyzing the situation. And Jill found a way to say no time after time after time to every proposal that we came up with, until she finally got to a point where she had heard from other attorneys, from our mediators, and from the judge that her legal positions were not going to go anywhere. And then at that point, she was ready to structure a settlement. And so I think that in life and in the law, certainly, there's a time and a place for everything. And that happens when you are dealing with the uncoupling of a family, that people are at different places emotionally, and they need to arrive in a place where they're ready to have that conversation and to move forward. So on the day that the divorce was finalized, Mike and I walked into the courtroom, and he was in the best shape he had been in since college. He walked tall and proud. He was polite to Jill and to her attorney. Her attorney didn't even know how to react, just kind of like mumbled through some weird hello saying, and Jill wouldn't even look at him or acknowledge his good morning. And a half hour later, he walked out, his head held high, and he thanked me with a warm hug. And I don't know that Mike realized his transformation at that point, but I certainly did. And I think that Jill did too. Because by staying focused on liberality, on being open-minded and free from prejudice, on not judging her, but worrying about what was best for him and their children, and about how he was going to move forward and what he wanted his future to look like, he really was able to accept multiple scenarios that could eventually end his case. And one of them worked out for him. And that doesn't mean that he didn't compromise, or that she didn't ultimately compromise, because that's a part of it. But he wasn't stuck in one mindset, which is where Jill was for a very long period of time, and which is why they had such issues in getting to an end result. And he came out with his goals met and his sanity, frankly, in check. And Jill sat in that courtroom and looked like the evil archetype in a bad soap opera, scowling at him and at me. I think at one point she had said that, some made some derogatory comments about, our relationship as attorney and client, because that's all that it was and all that it ever would be. She just couldn't accept that he was not holding on to the anger or feeding into her anger the same way that she did. And, true story, Jill has since referred 2 clients to me with positive referrals, because she recognizes now with time and space that she spent a lot of money to have somebody have her anger come out. I guess she could have afforded it, but probably could have used that money better spent on a myriad of different things. And at the end of the day, always going to be a part of her life because they have a family, they have children together, and he's in a different place, and he'll still reach out time and again to say, hey, this has come up, and I've thought about it without me having to prompt him. Now he's been so mentally trained to say, I thought about it for a few days and this is what I'm thinking, do you have another suggestion? And that puts him in control of his life, number one, saves him money, number two, but it also, I believe, gives him a sense of pride in how he's handling these very difficult life choices. And he's doing that by taking control of it, but also by not engaging in her issues and focusing on his issue and the children's. And that is what the valor of liberality is. In essence, you know, we read the definitions. And so he's now a magnificent person. You know, he was always a great guy, I think, but also just having that, you know, that rising above it, that sense of, you know, and he's proud of that. He's proud of the example that he sets. And he actually started a talk group, a support group in his town for other people. It's not just men, but there are men and women who come through where he is, you know, kind of allowing them to vent in that setting, and telling them that it doesn't have to be that way. And he's brought in a therapist, the person that he ended up working with, to guest speak pretty often in that group and help them with tools and whatnot. And it's really been a positive, something that could be so terrible and so damaging. He's turned it into a more positive experience and moved forward, and becoming a better version of himself, if you will. So I'm happy to answer any questions at this point in time, if you have anything that you want to ask.
So does anyone have any questions? So today, for some of those people who are on the call now who came on late, the virtue of the day, you want to just go over that one more time, Sandra, so we can kind of go back to the premise of the virtue?
Yeah, the definitions, you mean?
We'll just start with what the virtue was.
Oh, sure. So it's liberality, magnificence, and pride.
And in this case, it seems to me that pride is both a positive and a negative, right? So when you can feel proud, that's a great thing. But if pride gets in your way, which sounds like it did at one point in this process for both of them, it stops you from making positive change.
Yes, yeah. And so that's why I went on and I looked at that definition of pride from, of course, the utmost authority, Wikipedia. And it said that, you know, it's funny because it refers to a humble and content sense of attachment towards one own or another's choices or action. And so I think that in the true definition of the word, it is supposed to be a positive, but being too proud in admitting that you're wrong, perhaps, or just having too much, I think that's ego instead of pride is the difference. Mm-hmm. And sometimes maybe we interchange them, but I think there is a difference. I think that in the beginning, it was his ego, frankly, that, again, having been cheated on and left, he felt, like many people do, betrayed and deeply hurt and all of that. And her ego in that, while a lot of people, a lot of women, I find, we want equality and we're advancing the way and we will fight for it. In our personal lives, we're not always so convinced that we want that. And it's hard. It's certainly a harder road to toll than it was in the past, because you want to be out there and you're working. But I've had a lot of women say to me, like, you know, I'm upset, I'm frustrated, I'm bitter. Bitter is a very common word I hear, that my spouse gets to leave the day, you know, his day's done at 2:30. He doesn't work in the summer. A lot of, you know, it's a lot of that teacher dynamic. And so I think that becomes ego and not pride. I think pride is supposed to be the positive attribute of saying, you make your decisions and I'll make mine, and whatever they are, I'm not going to judge you about them, and I'm going to move forward and understand that this is who you are, because you're not going to be able to change that person.
Anyone have any questions or thoughts? I mean, I have a couple myself, but I'd love for you guys to weigh in with Sandra. I mean, we all probably know or have been through, divorce personally. I haven't been through divorce personally. I have a cousin who's going through it now. And it's a challenging thing. Sandra, when they come to you, do they ever come with less emotion? I mean, is everyone coming in there with some sort of victim mentality, or do they come kind of logical? I mean, it feels like, I know you're not a therapist, but in some ways that's the sounding board, right? This is the most personal relationship that you've had for the most part, I would think, and it's untangling it. And there's all that emotion connected financially, emotionally, your children, everything about your life is sort of defined by your marriage in a lot of ways. And then
so I think it depends on where they are when they come to me. So if you're saying somebody who's first making this decision, I would say that 98% of those people are emotional. Either they are the victim, or they're victimizing somebody else. And they don't realize it, because a lot of times their victimization comes from anger. And so they feel justified in their conduct because they are angry because somebody did something to hurt them, and they don't understand that that's not an appropriate reaction, because it's a learned behavior. So it's something that they saw in their own parents or their own childhood, or whatever it is that has made them think that that's okay. The people who don't have that level of emotion, and who are just, they are generally the more amicable situations where both people have said, we can't do this anymore. We're not happy. We are consciously uncoupling. It's a very popular phrase now. We are consciously uncoupling. We are doing this. We both want to do this, and we don't want to spend a lot of time or emotional energy or resources or financial resources doing that. Here's the goals. Here's, we need you to tell us what the legal ramifications are of that. And so in those situations, you'll find that sometimes when I'm the second, like in Mike's case, the second attorney to come in to the situation, there's a more level of reasonableness, or logicalness that there is applied, because they've already kind of had that experience. And he came to me because he's got his second bill, frankly, and was asking himself, what has happened for all of this money? Like every day, it's just a nasty letter, a response, a nasty email, and a response. And it's not just the lawyers, the people generally communicate amongst themselves too. Like, you can't stop the clients from speaking to one another. Number one, they have to, because they usually have, even if it's not kids, a dog, a house, the mortgage, the bill for whatever that has to be addressed. So they will communicate, and inevitably the rancor that, if it's just their lawyers, it just seeps into their communications, and then it brings, it just increases and increases that level of rancor or hostility amongst them. And so he was at a point where he was recognizing that, and like I said, he said to me, I'm just angry all the time, and I don't want to be this way. And he felt that it was impacting his parenting with his kids, that he was like fun dad, and then all of a sudden he had no patience, and he was upset all the time, and just kind of wanted to retreat into his own self, and didn't want to be that kind of person anymore. So those people will come with a bit more reasonableness, but they don't necessarily know how to stop that cycle, which is again why working with a therapist is very important. And again, finding an attorney who's the right match for you, who understands what your goals are and can show you how to get there. It's important. It's important because again, if you're that person who relies on your attorney so heavily, then you may be guided to do something that's not who you are, or that may not ultimately serve your end goal.
So how do they know when you walk in? You walk in, you're going through this, and how do you know whether you have a letter writing attorney who's basically loves this game of going back and forth and ka-chinging your bank account on a regular basis? Because there are those types of lawyers out there, right? That don't really have a vested interest in solving this. They have a vested interest in bringing in income for their firm.
So I think that, any lawyer who's just going to say yes to everything that you have to say without giving you the pros and the cons, or, giving you the risks and the rewards, is that type of attorney. It is the job of the lawyer to advise you on the law. The law is not black and white, hardly ever. And it's not just in divorce, it's in every area of the law. Even in criminal law, where you would think that there would be much more black and whiteness, if you would, it's not. And so you need the when you're talking to an attorney or vetting an attorney, you're asking them, okay, this is what I want. And if they're like, yes, sure, no problem. There's never that answer. It's just not possible when you're talking about big scheme, because there are so many variables that come in. And so when you're meeting with an attorney and they're just yesing you to death, I think that that's a red flag.
And what was it when you said that the woman's, what she wanted, the law did not back her up, or that her case kind of folded? What were those things, and why would she have boxed herself in a corner where she wanted things that were not legally going to be?
So Jill's issue was that she was not paying him alimony. I'm not exaggerating when, to me, she said it, to our mediator, she screamed it in the courtroom, the hallways of the courthouse. She felt like he was a loser. Like, you're just a teacher. You never did anything to make anything better for this family. I work like a slave. I'm out here working all of these hours, and now you want me to give you money? Be a man. That was a constant. Be a man up. You need to be a real man and take care of yourself. Like, I can't, how pathetic are you? The emails were just like, so toxic, so toxic. Like, you're pathetic. How do you put your head on a pillow at night? You're never going to find another woman. You want money from me? It was just that mentality. And I've represented Jill's. I have been Jill's lawyer. And again, it's my job to say, you've made life choices. These are life choices. And at one point in time, before you became unhappy in your relationship, this choice suited you well. And you were happy to be here. You were, and it's not like you didn't get any benefit from it, right? My example is like, if your husband wasn't a teacher and he wasn't home at 2:30, your two children would be with a nanny or in daycare. Somebody else would be doing that. And if you were both working till 7, 8 o'clock at night, you'd be relying on somebody else to take that. So this was the choice that you made. And when it worked fine. And that wasn't an issue. And frankly, Jill and Mike met in college, and Mike got his teaching certificate. Like, you knew what you were marrying, and you have to have accountability for your own decisions. Everybody does. And I'm not saying that you need to be punished. We all make bad choices or wrong choices, but understand that this is the choice that you made, and the law is not here to give you a better outcome for that choice. That's not the purpose that's not justice. And if you want to know what real justice is, you have to really do some of your own homework before you go through the process or go to a lawyer who's going to give you information, because it's that starting premise to say, like, okay, but here you are, and this is what you can do. And the more you understand that, the more you accept that, then now we can come up with a strategy. Maybe it's not an outward check, because that check hurts you to write, but it's, there's assets here that you can move around. That's where creative problem solving comes into play. But she was getting, when I tell you, she was earning 5 times what he was earning, 5 times, and was adamant that she was not giving him a check because he was a loser and should have been making more money. That was just her whole idea. She would say it to anybody. And her lawyer would sit there very quietly and not say anything to, I mean, even when the four of us were there.
Can you imagine how this woman must have changed from the point where she fell in love with her, then probably ex-husband, and what must have happened to make her go so the opposite side, not even be seeing reason in a couple of things, and calling him for a loser for a job that I think has a lot of values and extremely underpaid.
Right.
Yeah. I think a lot of, as we all know, who are in or who have ever been in a relationship, we bring our own baggage, whether we know it or not, into every relationship that we have. Yeah. And I think that, I think she really loved him. I think she had her own baggage from other experiences in life. And I think that I was saying to somebody recently, I think I'm going to do an article about, I've had more and more the women in their 40s who just are like, I don't want to say it's automatic, but it feels like within like a snap of a finger, they just like want out of their lives. They want out of their choices. And I think it's part of this women's movement. So we are geared as young girls to be good girls and speak politely and, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, and, to be deferential and yes, stand up for yourself. And maybe it's not in your house, but it's certainly what television has told women who are now in their 40s when they were children, and society. And then we look at political things that go on and all of that. And now we're in the world is changing, and it's been changing, but there's a lot more voice to certain situations that are affecting women's issues. And I think that I just see it, like people who are just coming to me or just at cocktail parties, and they're just snapping, and they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be that woman. I don't want to be that wife. And it's not necessarily, there's still the traditional, terrible situations where there is abuse, or whether it's emotional or physical or financial. I'm talking about where those situations aren't existing. I think women are just changing their idea about what their lives need to be. And men, for that same instance, are doing it as well, but it's not as dramatic, because I think men who always sought to get a divorce, it was like, okay. I remember watching, if anybody watched the Mad Men series, it felt at some point during that series that getting divorced was like a badge of honor for the men on the show. It was like a rite of passage, basically, that they
were getting an upgrade. They were going
That's
for the upgrade.
That's right. They were all leaving their homemaker, attractive wives, and moving on to, a younger, freer lifestyle. And so I think it's different, because society has kind of been like that for men in different ways, and not everybody. I'm not trying to apply it to everybody, but women our issues are being handled differently now, and I see that.
Well, you said, in this case, the woman had the advantage of the economics, right? And on the negative side, women who stay at home and don't make an income, sometimes that's what holds them back and stays in marriage for the opposite reasons. I think when women have the purse, the power of the purse, they may have that ability to say, okay, I'm out a lot faster, right?
Yes.
And then maybe also, one of the things that goes back to this, and it doesn't even, for me, it's, I'm reading a book about how to get past happiness to really go to joy, which is a very different climb.
Sure.
And one of the things they talk about in any institution, right, where there's some rules and regulations, and whether that's religion, take religion, for example, there's people that say they're spiritual, and then there's people that I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious.
Yep.
And what's the difference between that? Well, the way the author said it, and it was really impactful, and I think it applies to marriage, is, you can be spiritual, but that could feel like an emotion. But to be religious is a commitment, because you're committed to going to something every week, to go through the same routine, to recommit every time. And it's a structured belief system. And that is a commitment that you make. And, marriage is a commitment. It's not just a feeling. I think I'm married 26 years. I talk among my friends, and there's not one time, not one of my group of friends where at one point we said we want out. you know, for a window of time, it's an up and down thing. And 6 months later, we're back in love, right? But you stay through the bad times because you're committed to it. And I mean, the saddest part to hear about is this woman who's saying, I'm a loser. What are those children hearing about their father?
You know, but I would like to add a little bit to what you just said, Sandra, before about the women who are at 40, this snap situation where they out of a sudden went out of it. It very much sounds a little bit like midlife crisis. And the point, and what I'm trying actually to say is, I'm not sure if it's just because women speak out their minds more than they used to. They have more rights and there's a movement. I do believe it has far more to do with the fact that 40 is around the time, and it varies a little bit more, a little older or so, but around that time when you are aware that your life is has a finite amount of time, and that you realize, oh my gosh, what were my dreams and where I am now. And instead of, and this comes to the commitment, what you just said, Penny, is instead of committing and working with their partner, husband or so, or wife to fulfill dreams the best they still can, because some of the doors are closed, as we all know. There is a time that is passed and you cannot redo it anymore. But they think the only way to mend that problem is really getting out of a marriage and not working together to fulfill their both their dreams, because I think it's not much different on the other side. And this is, I believe, one of the reasons why I said it happens like with a snap of a finger. You literally wake up in the morning and say, oh my gosh, what has happened? I am 40, 45 or something like that. And what have I accomplished? What is it what I leave behind? What is it that I'm really proud of? What is it? My dreams were such and such. And look what kind of a, call it loser or whatever you want to call it, just for describing the situation. Look where I'm right now. And I think this is a very, very powerful situation, and oftentimes happens in conjunction with losing a friend much sooner than you would have thought, a young friend who out of a sudden pass, parents, or basically anybody that is close to you that out of a sudden makes you aware of, or is hit by a terrible disease or illness, and you out of a sudden realize all these things. Oh my gosh, this could happen to me tomorrow. And what has happened? What have I done?
So Regina, I think that 100% of what you're saying is accurate. I think that it's a combination of both of those things.
It's true.
So, you know, it's that you're right. There's something that changes your life that you say, where am I? What have I accomplished? But how did you get there? You know, so again, I go back to Jill and Mike. Jill, being a strong woman, successful in her career, but as a child, I have to believe that she was geared towards, I have to get married. You know, they got married right out of college.
Yeah.
You know, she married her college sweetheart. It was it's all of those things that, you know, that I think society did in some way tell her, this is who you're supposed to be. And then there's this event that happens, and maybe it's a midlife crisis, or maybe it's the loss of a friend, or that she wakes up and says, what is happening to me? And men have been doing that for centuries, I think it's newer for women to have that sort of thing.
Yes.
And because divorce is not as taboo as it once be. Being a single mother is not taboo anymore. You have the choice to say, I'm never going to get married and I'm going to have children because of technology and science and medicine. I think all of those things are why we're seeing it now. It's very, I find very interesting. And Mike, he would have come and been on the show today, or the Zoom call, but he is away with the kids, and
that was more important.
Yes, and he didn't want to do it while he was like, at first he was like, I'll do it while I'm away, and then I was like, you know what, don't bother, just be with your kids.
I'm thinking of some nice single women for Mike if he hasn't already found one. I have some people I'm thinking for him.
So I mean, we've become friendly, and he doesn't want to date. He doesn't want to, he'll go out on dates, but he doesn't want any commitment at this point in time. He's still very hurt.
He's healing, I think.
Yeah. He needs time. And good for him to recognize that. Yeah. Because a lot of other people will jump right into something new. So find a new security blanket. may not be the right person, but they'll do that because they want to show their ex that they're still wanted by somebody, or that they don't need the, you know, whatever it is, or that they can't be alone. I don't know what the story is, but I actually think he's a very evolved man. I tell him all the time that he's able to recognize these things.
And you just brought something up that I found very interesting as well. Marrying your college sweetheart. I often think that the way marriage is portrayed, and I'm not saying just for women, for men as well, is not in a way that, first of all, it's a commitment. Secondly, it's really hard work. And everybody who tells me differently, I call out a liar. I'm sorry, but I really, really believe in that. And they always think, you know what, this is just the beginning and I can change him or her. And this is never, ever gonna happen.
No.
Because you cannot, I think, yeah, we're in that age where we all know, yes, we know we cannot change people. We cannot make change happen for them. They either want to change or they don't. If they don't, this is what you get. What you see is what you get. And I think this is not actually really communicated, and it's not, especially young people are not made aware of the fact this is a person, the basic traits that this person has will probably stay with them for the rest of their lives. Is that what you really wanted to commit to? There is nothing you can change. You can be the most beautiful woman, you can be the most persuasive person. It's not gonna happen. And I think
my mother used to tell me, and I think that, you know, my mother is a very wise woman for many reasons, but she always would say, you can maybe change an A to a B, but you can never make an A a Z. And it's true. I think that that's true. You can maybe, you know, so my husband never ate vegetables until we started dating, like never. So now he eats vegetables. I would say I made him from an A to a B. You know, he never picked up his clothes off the floor when we first moved in. And then one day he came home and all of his clothes were on the front lawn. And I was like, so here's how this is going to work. Either you're going to pick up your clothes or they're going to end up outside, buddy. He picks up his clothes now. That's A to B stuff. It's, you know, if somebody is controlling you and talks poorly to you or other people that are important in their life, that's not going to change.
No, that's
who
right.
they are.
But that is in my view, a disrespect to human beings in general. I don't think that a person who talks to a husband, a wife, or to anybody else feels any respect for values, for worth of that other human being. And we have, I should probably not bring this up, but we have a very good example for that right now that we unfortunately see quite frequently in the media. And I do believe it's really something they don't care about. There is no respect, and I think this is one of the most important basic rules in a relationship. If marriage or not marriage, it doesn't matter to me. If you don't have respect, if you don't accept the person the way it is, there's no way that that's gonna happen when you're older or especially when things go not your way.
Yeah, and we're at that special moment in time where we have to be good to each other. You know, Sandra, just as we close up, I mean, one of the things that I've noticed from what you were talking about is that, you know, kind of what Regina was saying was, you know, when this woman is going around the neighborhood, going around talking about her soon-to-be ex-husband, it says a lot more about her than it does about him. And I can't even imagine the gossip after a while where she was looking good to these people, because
so,
to
you know,
your
it's
point,
funny that you say that, because I think that's the normal reaction, but the reality is, and I've seen it in my own neighborhood, forget about as a lawyer, is that there are some people who will feed right into what Jill's saying, and they will align themselves with Jill. And it's probably because they are miserable in their own lives.
Right.
They have their own unhappiness.
Yeah.
And now, oh, she's unhappy. Oh, they look so perfect. Now I'm gonna, you know, and you see it all the time. People take sides, right? You lose a friendship because of a dispute amongst friends, or people lose friends in a divorce. They do. People pick sides. So yes, I agree that she probably didn't make herself look well to a certain sect of people at the school or in the neighborhood. But then there were other people who just fed that terrible little engine.
and it's terrible because it's just such a, like,
narcissism.
it's the negativity that we really don't need anymore, right? I mean,
and that's what I'm saying about the deep work of rising above that, of, you know, of saying literally, because you're not going to, you know, you're not going to change Jill, and you're not going to change the way her lawyer behaves. So you have to change how you respond to that. You have to be, you can't control that. And that is what the Valor really
Right.
focuses on and really talks about. So I thought that I would give you 2 reading recommendations for your end of summer reading list. Mindset Makeover by Stephen Schuster is a great one. And if you want to delve a little bit deeper, this one's actually a workbook, but it's pretty great. It's called Conquering Toxic Emotions, and that's by Rhonda Favano. And both of those can be found on Amazon. Okay, so now that we've explored the 3 virtues together, I believe that if you're listening today, you are someone who has either been through divorce, is contemplating divorce, or has a family member or a friend who may be thinking about it themselves, and you're here to get some information for them. And if you're in this boat, you should reach out for a lifesaver, because information can only take us so far. Taking the next step means that you contact an attorney to talk about a very individual and important situation. And if you think that I'm a good fit, you can email me at sfava@foxrothschild.com, and I will put you on my calendar. You can also get some valuable information, more detailed information on my newly launched website, asksandrafava.com. Check it out anyway, because I'd love to know what you all think about it and get some feedback for it. And I hope to see you all next month, where I hope to be joined by a special guest and share with you how focusing on the valors of honor and good temperance serves a bigger purpose through a difficult time. Have a nice day, everyone.
thank you, Sandra.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting.
Great. Have a good one, guys.
Bye,
You
ladies.
too. Bye-bye.